After years of hard work, Jamal finally bought the car of his dreams. But the moment he pulled into his driveway, the neighborhood HOA president, known as Karen, tried to ruin it. She demanded he pay her insurance to park, then staged a meltdown when he refused. But what she didn't know, cameras were rolling. What happens next is pure justice, and you won't believe how it ends. The late afternoon sun dipped low over the tidy streets of Haarlem, a picturesque town just west of Amsterdam. The air smelled faintly of tulips and damp cobblestone, a quiet charm that had drawn Jamal Rivers to this corner of the Netherlands 6 years ago. He'd come from Atlanta, chasing freelance graphic design gigs and a slower pace of life, leaving behind the chaos of corporate America and a beat-up Toyota Corolla that had seen better days. Now, at 34, after years of grinding, saving, and sketching late into the night, he'd finally done it. He'd bought the car of his dreams, a 1972 Volvo P1800, cherry red, with sleek curves and a purr that sounded like jazz on a summer evening. It wasn't flashy, just clean, classic, and earned. Jamal eased the Volvo into the driveway of his modest two-story home on Wilhelminastraat, a street lined with neat brick houses and manicured lawns. He stepped out, running a hand along the hood, feeling the cool metal under his fingers. For a moment, he let himself smile. This was his reward, a tangible piece of pride after years of hustle. The car gleamed under the fading light, and he could already imagine weekend drives along the North Sea coast. That's when he heard the sharp clack of heels on pavement. "Mr. Rivers!" The voice cut through the stillness like a knife. Jamal turned to see Karen Vandermeer storming toward him, her blonde bob bouncing with every furious step. She was the self-appointed queen of the Wilhelminastraat Homeowners Association. HOA Karen, as the neighbors whispered behind her back. In her mid-50s, with a perpetually pinched expression and a wardrobe of pastel blazers, she wielded her clipboard like a scepter. To her, rules weren't suggestions, they were gospel, and she was the high priestess. "What's this?" she demanded, gesturing at the Volvo as if it were a stray dog squatting on her lawn. "My new car," Jamal said evenly, folding his arms. He'd dealt with Karen before, petty complaints about his recycling bins or the height of his hedges. But this felt different. Her eyes narrowed, glinting with something he couldn't quite place. "It's loud," she said, though the engine was off. "And it doesn't fit the aesthetic of the neighborhood. We have standards, you know." Jamal raised an eyebrow. "It's a classic. It's insured, registered, and parked on my property. I don't see the problem." Karen clutched her clipboard tighter, her lips thinning into a line. "The problem, Mr. Rivers, is that the HOA has a new policy. Any vehicle not pre-approved requires a registration fee, paid directly to me, for our collective insurance pool. It's to protect the community." Jamal blinked, then let out a low chuckle. "That's not a thing. My car's my business, not the HOA's. I've got my own insurance." Her face flushed pink. "It's a rule. I drafted it myself last week. You'll pay $200 by Friday, or we'll have to escalate this." "Escalate?" Jamal's voice stayed calm, but his jaw tightened. "Karen, you don't get to invent fees for my personal property. That's not how this works." "Don't you dare lecture me," she snapped, stepping closer. "I've lived here 20 years. I keep this street respectable. People like you—" She stopped herself, but the unspoken words hung heavy in the air. Jamal felt them anyway, a familiar sting he'd known since he was a kid in Georgia, sharpened now by the quiet racism of suburban Europe. It wasn't loud here. It was subtle, insidious, cloaked in bureaucracy and fake smiles. "I'm not paying you a cent," he said, his tone firm but measured. Good night, Karen. He turned to head inside, but Karen wasn't done. With a dramatic huff, she threw herself onto the hood of the Volvo, sprawling across it like a martyr. "Help! He's attacking me!" she shrieked, loud enough for windows to crack open along the street. "This man is a menace!" Jamal froze, staring at her in disbelief. "Are you serious right now?" "Call the police!" she wailed, flailing an arm. "He's threatening me!" Neighbors peeked out. Old Mr. Johnson with his cane, the young couple across the street, even the teenage girl who walked her dog every evening. Jamal's pulse quickened, but he didn't move. He'd learned long ago that reacting was what people like Karen wanted, an excuse to paint him as the aggressor. So he stood there, hands in his pockets, watching her performance with a mix of anger and exhaustion. What Karen didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that the street lamp 10 meters away had a small security camera bolted to it, installed by the city council last year after a spate of bike thefts. Its lens was trained right on Jamal's driveway, silently recording every second of her tantrum. The wail of sirens pierced the quiet Harlem evening as a police van rolled up Wilhelmina Straat. Jamal stood by his Volvo, hands still in his pockets, watching Karen's theatrics escalate. She'd slid off the hood and was now clutching her arm, moaning about bruises that didn't exist. Her pastel blazer was askew, and her eyes darted toward the gathering neighbors, feeding off their attention. Jamal's stomach churned, not from fear, but from the absurdity of it all. He'd seen this playbook before. Exaggerate, accuse, deflect. It was a tired script, but one that worked too often. Two officers stepped out of the van, a stocky man with a buzz cut and a younger woman with sharp eyes. The man approached Karen first, probably because she was still yelling. "Mevrou, calm down. What's going on?" "He attacked me!" Karen pointed a trembling finger at Jamal. "I was just enforcing HOA rules and he shoved me onto his car. I could have been killed." Jamal exhaled slowly through his nose, keeping his face neutral. "That's not what happened," he said, his voice steady. "She threw herself on my car after I refused to pay her a made-up fee. I didn't touch her." The female officer glanced between them, her brow furrowing. "A fee? For what?" "For this monstrosity." Karen gestured at the Volvo like it was a blight on humanity. "It's a safety hazard. I told him he needs to register it with the HOA, and he got aggressive." The male officer scratched his head, looking at the pristine car. "It's parked legally. Sir, do you have insurance?" "Right here," Jamal said, pulling out his phone to show the digital certificate. "Fully covered. It's my property, and I told her I'm not paying her anything." Karen's voice pitched higher. "He's lying. He's dangerous. You need to arrest him." The female officer held up a hand. "Enough. We'll sort this out. Mevrou Vandermeer, do you have proof of this rule you mentioned?" Karen faltered, clutching her clipboard. It's new. I haven't filed it yet, but as HOA president, I have authority." Jamal almost laughed. Almost. Instead, he pointed casually at the street lamp. "You might want to check the camera up there. It's been recording this whole time." Karen's head snapped up, her face draining of color. "What camera?" "The city installed it last year," Jamal said, his tone matter-of-fact. "Bike thefts. It's got a clear view of my driveway." The officers exchanged a look. The woman nodded. "We'll request the footage. For now, both of you stay here." Karen's bravado cracked. She stammered, That's not necessary. I'm the victim here." But the officers were already radioing for the footage, and the neighbors' murmurs grew louder. Jamal caught snippets. She's at it again. Poor guy just got that car and felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this wouldn't end how Karen planned. 20 minutes later, the officers had the video on a tablet, pulled from the city's security system. Jamal stood with his arms crossed, watching Karen fidget as the female officer tapped play. The footage was crisp. There was Jamal, stepping out of his Volvo, calm and unhurried. Then Karen, storming up, waving her clipboard. The audio caught her shrill demands. 200 by Friday! And Jamal's cool refusal. Then, the pièce de résistance. Karen flinging herself onto the hood, screaming like a banshee while Jamal stood still, hands in his pockets. The male officer snorted. Mevrouw, this doesn't look like an attack. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. It's edited. He provoked me. With what? The female officer asked, rewinding to Jamal's measured responses. He barely moved. Neighbors were crowding closer now, peering at the tablet. Mr. Johnson, the old man with the cane, muttered. She tried fining me for my roses last month. Said they were too red. The young couple, Sophie and Lars, nodded. She told us our dog's barking violated noise rules. Our dog's mute, Sophie said, incredulous. Jamal stayed quiet, letting the tide turn. He'd learned over the years that silence could be a weapon. Let people reveal themselves. And Karen was unraveling fast. I'm protecting this neighborhood, she shrieked. You don't understand. He doesn't belong here with that thing. Her finger jabbed at the Volvo, but her eyes were on Jamal, and the subtext was unmistakable. The female officer's gaze hardened. Mevrouw Vandermeer, are you implying something about Mr. Rivers personally? No, Karen backpedaled, but it was too late. The crowd had heard it, felt it. The tension that simmered beneath polite Dutch smiles bubbled up. Racial undertones Karen couldn't hide anymore. We've seen enough, the male officer said. Mr. Rivers, you're free to go. Mevrouw, we need to discuss filing a false report. Karen's eyes widened. False? I'm the victim. Not according to this, the woman said, tapping the tablet. And inventing HOA fees? That's fraud. As the officers escorted a sputtering Karen to the van, Jamal leaned against his car, exhaling. The neighbors lingered, some offering nods, others apologies. Sophie approached. We should have said something sooner. She's been unbearable for years. Jamal shrugged. She showed herself tonight. That's enough. But it wasn't over. Not yet. The next morning, Wilhelminastraat buzzed. Word of Karen's meltdown spread like wildfire, amplified by the footage leaking online. Someone had gotten a copy and posted it to a local Facebook group. By noon, it hit Twitter, tagged #HoKaren and #HarlemJustice. Jamal didn't seek the spotlight, but it found him. Reporters called, neighbors knocked, and the HOA board called an emergency meeting. Karen was suspended as president pending investigation, but the damage was deeper. Old emails surfaced, hers, demanding fees from certain residents while ignoring others, all non-white. Complaints she'd buried about her own violations, late-night parties, and unpermitted shed, piled up. The community woke up, piece by piece, to the quiet tyranny they'd ignored. Jamal stayed out of it, mostly. He fixed coffee, sketched designs, and polished his Volvo. But when Sophie and Lars organized a petition to dissolve the HOA entirely, he signed it. At the meeting, he spoke once. I just wanted to live here, not fight. But some rules aren't about order. They're about control. Karen was arrested 2 weeks later. Fraud, extortion, and a hate crime charge tacked on after her emails went public. She sobbed in court, claiming victimhood, but the judge wasn't moved. 6 months in prison, a fine, and a ban from HOA rolls. Poetic in its way. Her own rules undid her. Jamal drove his Volvo through Harlem that spring, windows down, jazz playing soft. The street felt lighter. Neighbors waved, kids biked, and the HOA was a memory. He'd won quietly by standing still. Yet as he parked, he wondered, how many Karens were out there, uncaught? Racism didn't vanish. It just changed costumes. Maybe this was a start, not an end. The Volvo gleamed under the street lamp. The camera blinked on, watching.